Welcome to Hard Script.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It started with a swipe. Not mine. Hers. A friend of mine, someone from work, someone who didn't even know her that well, messaged me late one night. Just a screenshot and a single sentence. "Is this your wife?" I stared at the image. It was her. Different lighting. Heavy filter. Slightly different name. But the face? Unmistakable. And the bio? Married, but complicated. Just looking for clarity. I didn't react. Not at first. Not out loud. I sat there staring at the screen like the pixels might change. Like the letters might rearrange themselves into something less final. Less real. But they didn't. She had posted herself on Tinder. While we were still sharing a bed. Still splitting bills. Still texting "love you" before meetings and sending each other photos of dinner like we were still playing the part. I didn't call her out. I didn't message back. I just closed my phone. Sat in that moment. Let the weight of it settle. Because what hit hardest wasn't the betrayal. It was the effort. The effort it takes to build a second version of yourself. A shadow identity. To crop photos just right. To word a bio that invites curiosity but dodges consequence. She didn't just drift. She decided. I watched her the next morning over coffee. Same routine. Same tired joke about the news. She didn't know I knew. And I didn't plan to tell her. Because in that moment, I wasn't angry. I was awake. The kind of awake that doesn't sleep again the same way. I started observing. Listening. Collecting details in silence like pieces to a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Her phone face down more often. Her girls' night. Texts more frequent. Laughter in the other room for no reason at all. But still, I didn't speak. Because what do you say to someone who's already left you quietly? Nothing. You go quiet too. And that's exactly what I did. I smiled when expected. Replied to her questions. Kissed her cheek like it meant something. But behind my eyes, I had already started walking away. Not physically. Not yet. But the man she married, the one who would have begged, fought, or exploded, he was gone. And the one left was watching everything. And waiting. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of rage, because of clarity. I lay in bed beside her, listening to her breathe like everything was fine. But nothing was fine. And maybe it hadn't been for a while. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. By morning, I had made a decision. Not to confront. To detach. She went to work. I stayed home. Took the day off. Told my manager I needed time to think. Not an emergency, just space. That was true. I needed distance from a version of myself that had become too predictable. Too forgiving. Too convenient. I started small. I unlinked our Spotify account. Logged out of the shared calendar. Deleted a few recurring dinner reservations I used to book months in advance. Nothing loud. Nothing dramatic. Just invisible shifts in gravity. She wouldn't feel them immediately, but over time, the center would tilt. Around 3 p.m., I got another message. Different friend. Different screenshot. A Tinder profile again. New pictures. New wording. Not looking for anything serious. Just someone honest. The irony cut deep. I took a screenshot. Added it to a folder on my desktop. Labeled, Truth. Not for revenge. For reference. Because people like her rewrite history. And when that day comes, I wanted the record, not to prove her wrong, but to remind myself I wasn't crazy. That night, she came home like always. Kissed my cheek. Asked about dinner. I told her I'd already eaten. She hesitated, barely, then went upstairs. Later, I heard her laughing on the phone in the bathroom. Whispering. Like we were roommates, not married. I took my pillow and slept on the couch. She didn't ask why. The next morning, I left the house early. No goodbye. Just keys, wallet, door. And while sitting in my car in an empty lot, I typed 12 words into a blank message and saved it in drafts. You're not losing me. You already lost who I used to be. I didn't send it. Not yet. Because the first strike wasn't words. It was removal. The quiet pulling away of presence, affection, predictability. I had been consistent for too long. Now I was becoming unreadable. And for someone like her, unreadable is terrifying. Because control needs a reaction. And I was done giving them. You don't need proof when you already know. But I gathered it anyway. Not to confront her. To ungaslight myself. Because over time, you start questioning the moments that felt off. The delayed replies. The makeup that didn't match the plan. The sudden girls' nights that ended without details. So I stopped guessing and started recording. I synced her old iPad, The one she forgot was still connected to her phone. Most of the messages were boring. Memes, group chats, grocery lists. Then I saw the name. Dylan. At first, I thought it was work. Until I read. Last night was, wow. Didn't expect to feel that again. No work colleague sends that. I scrolled slower. Careful. Detached. Flirtation. Compliments. Then location sharing. She met him 3 times. One hotel. One rooftop bar. One quick drink. That turned into an overnight based on the timestamp. I didn't save screenshots. I didn't need to. The truth wasn't digital. It was in her voice when she came home the next day and smiled too wide. Asked if I wanted Thai food. I said no. Because how do you eat with someone whose mouth just returned from rewriting your vows? But still, I didn't speak. That was the power. She thought she still had the upper hand, that I hadn't noticed, hadn't pieced it together. And that silence? It made her sloppy. She left her Apple Watch charging in the kitchen. I didn't even check it, it buzzed on its own. The preview said, "Did you take the test yet?" No name. Just a sentence that rearranged my blood. Later that day, she started acting strange. Hovered around me. Asked how work was. Sat on the couch like she wanted to talk, but didn't. I nodded. Said nothing. And that's when I realized. I didn't need to expose her. I just had to stop protecting her. Because the lies we let live the longest are the ones we keep shielding with our silence. I turned off the shared cloud storage. Changed the locks on our joint documents. Downloaded every receipt from the past 60 days and created a private folder labeled Exit. Not for lawyers. For clarity. She still didn't know I knew. But soon, she'd realized the man she thought she was fooling wasn't confused anymore. He was preparing. And when the door finally closed, it wouldn't slam. It would click. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't leave a note. I just left. Not in the way she would notice right away. My clothes were still in the closet. My toothbrush was still in the cup. But my presence? Gone. I waited until she left for her weekend yoga class, the one she claimed was really important for her energy. I knew she wasn't going to yoga anymore. But I didn't care. Not now. I powered off my phone. Opened a new one I'd set up weeks before. Different carrier. New number. Just for me. No synced accounts. No shared maps. No digital leash. Then I drove 3 hours north. An Airbnb with no signal. No smart TV. Just a fireplace, a notebook, and the sound of no one expecting me to answer. I didn't check texts. I didn't check email. I didn't wonder what she was thinking. Because by now, she was wondering. And that was the point. Not to scare her. To unhook her. For months, I had stayed predictable. Steady. Forgiving. The type who waits, absorbs, explains. Now, I was the question mark. And when someone builds a version of you they think they can control, your disappearance becomes their collapse. I sat by the fire that night and breathed differently. Not deeper. Just honestly. She didn't know where I was. That silence would grow. The longer it stretched, the louder it would get inside her head. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because she never imagined I could choose peace over proximity. When I finally turned the phone back on 2 days later, I had 12 texts and 3 voicemails. The first ones were casual. Then came the worry. Then came the panic. I read none of them. Because when someone lies to your face and still expects you to answer their call, they're not looking for conversation. They're looking for control. She had posted nothing online. Not even a "where are you?" Which meant she was hiding it. Because people like her don't break character unless they know the audience has vanished. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was unavailable, in every way she had once depended on. That was the real disappearance. Not distance, but detachment. His name was Dylan. I didn't go looking for him. He surfaced in her messages. Too confident. Too casual. The kind of man who believed that if he stayed quiet enough, nothing would trace back to him. I wasn't interested in him as a person. I was interested in what he represented. A flaw in the system. A loose hinge on the door she left open while calling it complicated. He didn't know who I was. But I knew who he was. Knew where he worked. Knew which bar they first met in. Knew what car he drove. Even knew his landlord's name. She'd mentioned it once in a text. Can't meet at mine. Dylan's lease is tight. I didn't confront him. I just ran a quiet background check. Nothing illegal. Just enough to find patterns. He had a personal LLC registered under a different name. 2 small claims against him. One from a former client. One, more recent, from a woman with a sealed order. It wasn't confirmation. It was leverage. I put the details in a folder. sent an anonymous tip to his employer's ethics line. They prided themselves on discretion, branding themselves as values first. I knew how fast reputations could shatter in companies like that. I wasn't trying to destroy him. I just wanted to remove the net she'd been falling into. Because people like her only change when they lose the safety they assume is permanent. A few days later, she posted something cryptic. A black square. No caption. The kind of thing you only see when someone's illusion finally tears at the edges. She texted me late that night. I didn't read it, but the preview said, "You don't understand what's happening." She was right. I didn't. Because I no longer cared. That's the part they never expect. Not the silence. Not the distance. But the indifference. Dylan stopped posting. His Instagram disappeared. One of her mutuals unfollowed both of them. Rumors moved faster than the truth. And I never spoke his name. Because when you remove your energy from the drama, it collapses under its own weight. I didn't build revenge. I removed oxygen. And without that, the fire goes out on its own. Reputation is a fragile currency. And hers began to collapse at brunch. Her closest circle, the ones she used to call my real ones, were gathered at a trendy spot downtown. Group photos, overpriced mimosas, and subtle hierarchy built on who got the best lighting. Except this time, the lighting didn't help. I wasn't there, but I didn't have to be. Word travels when people start seeing what they weren't meant to. One of them, Jenna, had seen Dylan's name before. Another had noticed the energy shift. Fewer mentions of me. More cryptic posts. Shorter tempers. It didn't take long for someone to say it out loud. Are you and him still even married? The question landed like a needle across glass. She laughed, said something vague, changed the subject. But the silence after that? That was the fracture. She used to command attention. Now she was being observed. Studied. Because once doubt enters the room, respect quietly leaves. Over the next week, she became noticeably lonelier. Her group chat went quieter. Brunch invites slowed. One of her oldest friends unfollowed her on social. No drama, just quiet distance. The same way I left her. Only now, it wasn't one man disappearing. It was the room. Because people don't stick around for the whole story, they leave when the main character starts believing she's untouchable. And the version of her they once loved? She buried that under filters and half-truths. She tried to regain footing. Posted a black and white photo of herself with some overexposed quote about growth through pain. Comments were minimal. Only one like came from someone she knew in real life. She was slipping, but not because I exposed her. I never said a word. I never needed to. Because when you stop protecting someone's story, the audience sees the plot holes on their own. And the woman who once curated every scene of her life like a highlight reel now stood in frame alone. No lighting, no backup, no applause. Her downfall wasn't orchestrated. It was observed. And I was just one of many now, watching from a distance. Silence used to be something she weaponized. Now, it was something she feared. I could feel it happening from a distance, even without seeing her. Her energy, once loud and curated, had gone flat. Muted. No more selfies with iced coffee. No more gym check-ins. No more half-clever captions about being in her healing era. She was vanishing, not because anyone took her down, but because she'd burned through the attention she once relied on. And when attention dries up, people like her don't know how to survive. The group chat she used to dominate? It still existed. She just wasn't in it anymore. I knew that because someone who used to be her closest friend reached out, not to gossip, but to say this. She's different. Not even dramatic anymore. Just quiet. It's weird. But it wasn't weird. It was what happens when you run out of stories to control. She started showing up to work early, something she never used to do. Stayed late. Volunteered for things no one asked her to. People smiled, but they didn't engage. Because when someone loses their power, they either rebuild or retreat. She was retreating, and I saw her once, by accident. Grocery store. Middle of the day. She was in the self-checkout line, scanning items like the world had shrunk around her. A small basket. A half-empty stare. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, and chose not to act. Either way, she looked smaller. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone who finally realized the only person who ever really saw her had stopped looking. She posted one last thing. A blurry photo of the ocean with the words, "I miss the version of me that didn't need permission to feel safe." Only a few people reacted. And I didn't. Because by now, she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the echo. But echoes don't answer. They only remind you how far your voice has traveled, with no one left to catch it. Her texts had stopped. Her calls had dried up. The long paragraph I always expected never came. Maybe she knew it wouldn't land. Or maybe she was finally learning what it meant to live in the space she created, one where loyalty was optional and presence was taken for granted. And now, for the first time in her life, she was the one left standing in a quiet no one could fill. She waited outside my building. I don't know how long she'd been standing there. Arms crossed, coat wrapped tight, eyes fixed on the sidewalk like it might give her courage. It was raining. Not hard. Just enough to make the air feel heavier. I stopped when I saw her. She didn't smile. Didn't speak. Just stared. Like she didn't know if I was real, or if this was the last ghost she had to face before disappearing entirely. I said nothing. She stepped forward. I just need 5 minutes. Her voice was low, shaky. I nodded, not because I owed her time, but because silence sometimes needs to be heard before it's sealed. We stood under the overhang. She started talking, not with clarity, with panic disguised as honesty. A long, slow spiral of sentences that went nowhere. Words like confused, mistake, wasn't thinking clearly, didn't mean to. I let her speak. That was the confrontation. Not my anger, not her tears, but the absence of participation. Because when someone tells you they didn't mean to hurt you, what they're really saying is they didn't think you'd notice. And I had. Long before Dylan. Long before Tinder. Long before the moment I saw her become someone I no longer recognized. She finished eventually. Waited. Maybe for forgiveness. Maybe for a fight. Maybe for something. I gave her nothing. Not cruelty. Not closure. Just stillness. And in that stillness, she broke. Just a little. Her shoulders slumped. Her breath caught. She looked at me like she was trying to locate the man who used to rush in and fix what she shattered. But I wasn't him anymore. I had left that version behind the night. I realized my silence held more truth than her words ever had. She whispered something then. Maybe I miss you. Maybe come home. Maybe nothing at all. It didn't matter. I stepped back. Not out of fear. Out of clarity. The distance between us wasn't just emotional now. It was final. And when I turned and walked past her, I didn't look back. Because the real confrontation wasn't between us. It was between who she pretended to be and the silence that finally exposed her. Collapse doesn't happen in one moment. It's a slow unraveling, thread by thread, until everything they built around themselves no longer holds shape. After that last meeting, she didn't try again. Not directly. No more messages. No surprise visits. No fake emergencies wrapped in guilt. But I could still feel her presence. The echo of her trying to exist in places where she no longer had permission. She posted less. When she did, it was hollow. A cup of coffee. A caption about new energy. A blurry photo of a beach from 2 years ago. No engagement. No responses. Even her curated digital world had started to ignore her. People don't rally around someone who once owned every room. Not when they fall. They distance themselves. Quietly. With passive silence. She was now a whisper in circles where she used to dominate the conversation. The last friend still orbiting her finally let go. I heard through someone else. She drained every space she entered. That was the new story. She tried to fight it. Reshaped her narrative with a few public statements. A vague mental health post. A quote about forgiveness. One about accountability. But accountability doesn't land when it's staged. And no one applauded. No one reposted. No one reached out. I had become irrelevant to her publicly. The man she didn't mention, didn't acknowledge, didn't admit losing. But privately, she still felt the absence. That's the part they never understand. When you were the one who held them steady, who protected their image, their silence, their cracks, your exit isn't loud. It's lethal. Because now she stood in the exact space where I once poured patience, loyalty, presence. And she found nothing left. No man. No allies. No version of herself she could wear without being seen through. That's what collapse really is. Not a breakdown. A reckoning. She wasn't being punished. She was being revealed. And I wasn't there to stop it anymore. Because by the time the last lie burns out, the only thing left is the truth they tried to avoid. And now it surrounded her. Not from me. From everyone. I saw her one last time. Not planned. Not expected. Just a random afternoon in a bookstore we both used to love. I was there to clear my mind. She was browsing the self-help section. The irony didn't hit me until later. She looked up. Froze. No makeup. Hair pulled back. A thick sweater like she was trying to hide in fabric. There was no smile. No dramatics. Just recognition. And something behind her eyes I hadn't seen before. Stillness. She stepped back like she wasn't sure if I'd keep walking. I did. Right past her. Not out of cruelty. Not because I didn't see her. But because I had nothing left to give her. And she knew it. I could feel it in the way her breath stopped for a second, like she expected a word, a look, a pause. Anything that would tell her the door hadn't completely closed. But it had. Not with noise. Not with punishment. Just silence. Because what people don't realize is that absence isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the quiet you can't recover from. I didn't turn back. She didn't follow. And that was the moment she finally understood. This wasn't temporary. I wasn't taking a break. I wasn't trying to make her miss me. I was done. Not because she failed to love me, but because she thought I would stay even after she stopped trying. There's a difference. And in that difference, I found my peace. I left the bookstore. Sat in my car for a moment. No music. No thoughts. Just breath and clarity. She had become a chapter one no longer needed to reread. No bitterness. No pain. Just a line in the story that I had outgrown. And the final sentence? It didn't come with a slam or a scream. It came with a whisper I never said out loud. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. And sometimes, that's the most powerful ending of all. Been through it. When they crossed a line, and you made sure they felt it.